perfect segue because we have Mr. John Griffin is going to get directly into our site here. VIVA will keep you and have some questions at the end as well. I'll introduce you to continue the presentation.
Sure. Tomo, Estango. I'm greeting you in Picture T and Muskogee. How you doing? Great. My name is John Griffin, and I'm invited to tell a story about the people they call the Black Seminoles, Negro Seminoles. A lot of times, that particular part of history was kind of held in obscurity. But let me give the young people a disclaimer about black people. The stereotype that black people won't fight for their freedom, forget about that. There's no white man standing in a tree, jump out of a tree in the middle of 25 black men, beat them up, tie them up, send them to the coast, put on the ship. Tarzan was not around then, okay? Also, who would jump in the middle of LeBron James, Mike Tyson, and others? Also, the disclaimer I'd like to give that throughout military history, black men has fought for the freedom of this country as well as the freedom of themselves. In my introduction, I'd like to thank people who invited me here. I'd like to thank Seminole elders of years ago who took us in. We were black slaves running away from slavery. And I'd like to thank the elders. I'd like to thank Seminole tribe. I'd like to thank Mr. Willie John in his presentation. But let me go back a few years. Let me tell you who I am. My great-great-grandmother was from a group of people in Hernando County. Her granddaddy came down from a group of people called the Eufaulers. And they settled in an area in Brooksville where they called Chocochatty, Red House, or Red Town, or War Town. My great-great-granddaddy took my grandmother to his farm, and he had children by her. On my daddy's side, came from Sylvania, Georgia. His people was called Uchis. So I do have the old blood in my vein, even though I'm a black man. Also, on my great-great-granddaddy's side, he was an Irishman from North Carolina. So I'm all-American. The people I want to tell you about that people named the Black Seminoles, they were black African slaves coming out of Georgia, Alabama, and South Carolina. These people that were in slavery actually had been escaping into Florida long before the Seminoles started coming in. The people he called Seminoles. They were escaping into the Okefenokee swamps and living there. We call those people Maroons. They were Maroons. Also, the people that were escaping out of Alabama and Georgia, especially the ones from South Carolina, those people living today is called Gullah Geechee people. Have you heard that name before? The name Gullah comes from the word Angola, and there was a tribe called the Weezy people. So some entrepreneur in that time period thought about, let's start the rice planting business. And they thought about these people in West Africa, in Sierra Leone, with rice producers. They brought these African slaves here, and the coast of South Carolina pretty much had the same climate as West Africa, so they brought these people from Angola to start the rice business. But later on, these people in South Carolina, as well in Georgia and Alabama, they heard that the Spanish government was opening a way up for Native Americans to come over to Florida, and African slaves who wanted to come over into Florida, abide by their rules, pick up the Catholicism as their religion, and work for their own enterprising ways. So their slaves heard about that, so they started escaping into Florida. The ones in Georgia and Alabama start coming over, across the border. They start coming to St. Augustine and other places, and the ones from South Carolina start coming over. Now, it's been mentioned by Abraham. I've known people from South Carolina say that he came from the Gullah Geechee people. Now, when we think of warlike people, there were tribes in Africa, and their descendants came to this southern part of the country, from the Shantai tribe, the Igbo tribe, and we had people all the way from Sierra Leone, we had people from Angola, and these people were warrior-like people. Now, to get a man in slavery and to beat him down physically and psychologically, where he did not feel he had even a chance of fighting, then that's a pretty precarious situation. But the old spirit of being warriors came out in some of these men. They say, we will not be slaves, we will not be treated like animals. If the opportunity comes for us to be free, we are going where the freedom is offered to us. So those men escaped into Florida, and when they came to Florida, there were a group of Muskogee people, some Miccosukee people were here that the Spanish had welcomed in, and the Spanish had given them land, given them arms, and told them they could live in Spanish Florida. Then when the blacks came in, the blacks came in contact with people we call Seminole, and the Seminole people took them in, gave them refuge. For some reason or another, the Seminoles had a heart for these black slaves. They took them in. Some of the black slaves lived close to the Seminoles, some of them lived with the Seminoles, and a large amount of them lived far from the Seminoles. Some of the white people didn't want to live with the Seminoles because coming off the plantations, they had their religious practices. They wanted to hang on to their religious practices, such as being so-called Christian people. And also there was a cultural difference. Some of them had kept their cultural learnings they had brought from Africa. They learned from their foreparents. So they lived apart from the Seminoles. But the deal was made with the blacks and the Seminoles. The Seminoles say, well, we heard that you got agricultural skills. Most of all, you know how to speak the language of the white people. You've been around them all your life. You know their ways. You know their actions. Also, you can tell us when you lie, when they lying to us. So they made a deal with the Seminole people, and after a period of time, when we think about black Seminole warriors, it's when the blacks actually, when the encroachment of the white settlers was against the Seminoles, the blacks kicked in to say, well, we will fight with you. The blacks didn't want to go back to slavery. The Seminoles didn't want to give up their land. They wanted to stay in Florida. It was given to them. They had been coming in here for hundreds of years, and they didn't want to leave. And the blacks kept on saying, we want to stay with you because we got a taste of freedom, and we love Florida as well as you do. Now, at a period of time, the blacks started acculturating themselves with Seminole people. They started dressing like Seminole people. They acquired weapons, and they made a deal, say, well, at the end of the year, the Seminole people say, give us a portion of your crop. And when the white slave catchers come at you, or slave owners, we'll tell them, you belong to us. You're our slaves. There were tribes in the southeast who adopted slaves, such as the Salagi Cherokee people. You had even some Choctaw people had slaves. The whites had convinced them that it was a good thing to go into the slave business. But I believe the Seminole people say, we don't have time to be watching people, or lording or governing over people. They're people like we are. Let them live on the land, and if they want to be in with us and helping us with agriculture or whatever, we'll let that happen. But the conflict came in later on when the slave owners started making treks into Florida to take their slaves back, and that's when the conflict came in. When the blacks was close to the Seminoles and trying to convince the Seminoles, don't give up us to the slave owners. And after a period of time, the blacks and the Seminoles, they started making raids on plantations. They started stealing slaves, they started burning crops, they started burning buildings, and most of all, they started killing white people. That's when it hit the fan. That's when you had a man named Andrew Jackson, who had previously been in the Indian War. He came in and said, well, I'll take care of this problem. I'll send all the slaves back to the plantation, and all the Native American people, I'll depossess them, send them somewhere else. That's when it hit the fan. And that's when people start saying, well, that's the beginning of the Seminole Wars. I've talked to Seminole people say, well, they say it was 1, 2, 3 Seminole Wars. They say it was just one war. And I heard Mitchell Cypress say, we still at war with the United States government. We don't fight with rifles, spears, knives, we fight with lawyers. And they still have to struggle with them. So these black people that came into the state of Florida and was with the Seminoles, and they tried to convince the Seminoles not to give up Florida and not to let them go back to slavery. Now, we had black men who were what we call interpreters for the Seminoles. We had some who were war leaders. Most of all, what we'll talk about today is Abraham. Abraham, it's been said that he was a slave of a slave owner called Dr. Sierra up around the Pensacola area. He escaped from him, and somehow or another, Abraham ended up where it's called the Negro Fort. Andrew Jackson decided that here the British left a fort for the blacks to have. The blacks and the Native American people could come there, and it really irked him to know that blacks could be free and have a fort for their own protection. Now, he did an act that he supposedly shouldn't have done. He sent a contingent of boats down to destroy a Spanish land that a fort was on. Now, that could have caused some, bad things to happen. Here, Spain owns Florida, and you sent a boat in to destroy a fort on their land. But Andrew Jackson was that type of man. And reading his history, Andrew Jackson did a lot of things that he was supposed to do. Andrew Jackson had duels. He would call a duel out if you didn't agree with him. But what happened was, Andrew Jackson sent this boat down. They said, well, we're going to destroy this fort, the Negro Fort. They heated up a cannonball and shot it over in the fort. With a lucky shot, it hit the magazine where all the powder and stuff was stored. It blew it up. And they say that Abraham was there. But sometime or another, Abraham came down in this part of the country. Now, you had a chief called Micanopy. Micanopy came out of the bloodline of Sacopi. He came out of the bloodline of what we call cow people up on what we call Payne's Prairie area, where King Payne and those men had 1,000 head of cows and horses. And he came out of that matrilineal system where he was truly a chief. The word Micanopy is said to have been described is if a Miko, if you call a chief a Miko, then he was a Micanopy. He was the chief of all chiefs. He was the king of all kings. And Micanopy was from that matrilineal bloodline. Now, I heard people call Osceola, Ashinola called him a chief, but Osceola didn't come out of matrilineal bloodline. He was a war chief. He was a resistant leader, but he didn't have the same blood title like Micanopy. Micanopy settled in a place where we call today, well, his main place where he loved to visit was called Palaknakaha. And his main village was supposed to be what we call Okahumpke, or Okahumpka. Now the Okahumpke we know today is in Lake County, but the actual Okahumpke is located in Sumter County. He would go over to a place called Palaknakaha, and Abraham had set up his camp or village there under Micanopy. And they say Micanopy spent more time at Palaknakaha, old Abraham's town, because the Negroes took very well care of him. They took care of him. And they were smart enough to say, well, he is the chief of chiefs, then why not we take care of him? But Abraham was a man of great intelligence. He could speak Spanish, he could speak English, he could speak Hittite and Muskogee. And I heard people gave him the title of sense bearer. And a lady asked me one time, what is a sense bearer? And I just simply told her, he could make sense out of what white people were saying, and he could make sense out of what the Native Americans were saying. So he had that quality to communicate with both sides. Now Abraham also was a war leader. I don't know whether you are familiar with what some people call the Dade Massacre. Dade killing, some people say, but it's been said that Abraham was there in that battle. And on that dreadful morning of December 28, 1835, with Major Francis Langhorne Dade and 108 men marched from Fort Brooke on the way to Fort King. The Seminole laid an ambush for them, and you probably heard 105 men died that day on the soldier side. I think 5 Seminoles died that day. But Abraham was a very intelligent man, and believe it or not, I've been finding out that when human beings being put in a certain position, especially a precarious situation, they do things to benefit their family or their group. It's been said that Abraham always tried to look out for the black people more so than the Seminoles he was interpreting for. They even tried to kill Abraham one time. And, but who knows? In my studies, I found out that blacks and the Native American people were fighting white people, and it ended up black people fighting the Native American people, ended up the Native American people fighting black people, where in one group get at a disadvantage and it caused a confusion where they both start fighting against each other. Now here in Sumter County, I don't know how many of you know where Palaknakaha is located. How many know where Palaknakaha is located? Old Abraham Town. It's right down the road from here. On your way to Bevel's Corner, there, I'm forgetting that number of the highway. If you make a left off 301 and go that direction and come to a curve and go back to the curve and come up a hill, that's where Palaknakaha is. I've been on archaeological date with Dr. Terrence White there for a couple of years, and the property is owned by a man named Danny Coward. Have you heard that name before? Danny Coward? It's all cow pasture now. And matter of fact, when we came by there, we were cutting hay on it there today. And so Abraham was one of the what we call black Seminole leaders. We had others. We had men like Caesar Bruno, John Caesar, Cow Tom, Sugar Harry, and one of the most other famous one was John Horace. And the Spanish call him Juan Caballo. We call him John Caraco. And matter of fact, I just came from out in Brackettsville, Texas, where the great-great-grandson of John Horace is still living. His name is Mr. William Dove Warrior. I was a guest out there. They have a parade and have commemorative parade for the men that died in the battle with the Comanches and Apaches. They were called Black Seminole Scouts. Also, here in Florida, it's been said that, well, the blacks didn't play no particular part in Seminole history. I'm saying myself that they did play a part in their history. I don't care who would refute that. They were together at one time, but they separated, especially in Oklahoma. When the government said, well, we pay you Oklahoma Seminoles some reparation money, but when that green line was drawn in the sand, the Seminoles stepped back on one side and say, I'm Seminole. I don't know who you are. They left there together. They were on the council together. But money does strange things to people. Money can divide and conquer people. And I can go on all day, but I'd like to know what question you have for me. Yes, sir.
Where's the landmark to find Belleville's corner? Is south of the college here? Is that on US 1 south of
301.
Right.
301, Sumterville, going back to Bevel's Corner. I think it's over on that side. We on this side.
Right.
But,
and what is Belleville's corner? Is there a store there in the corner?
Near Center Hill.
48, about 48.
Right on me.
48.
Okay. Thank you.
But I've been thinking about going to the county commissioner. They need to put some kind of marker there because sooner or later, if Mr. Coward ever passed, you don't know what kids do. They sell land. And there should be a historical marker there of old Abrahamstown. Yes, sir.
Where is the Shelter County Oklahoma?
I really don't know. A park ranger, park manager at Dave Battlefield showed me on a map. It said it's there. Nobody's really searched it out, but it's in Sumter County. Steve.
John, Paul Remus, over on the board at Dave Battlefield, also sits on the board for the scenic byways of Sumter County. And they did a presentation at our last board meeting.
Right.
And said they are in the process of getting a marker to be placed at Pahala, so that there will be something there. It's part of the 62 scenic byways of Sumter County. And I believe the 28th of January, there's supposed to be a ribbon cutting for that scenic byway.
Old Abrahamstown.
Well, I don't know about the town, but
Yeah.
the scenic byways itself, and that's part of it.
But I got a friend of mine, he was a state senator, and he's friends with Mr. Danny Cowell. And I'm gonna find Mr. Danny Cowell and talk with him because he knows Dr. Terrence White. And if need be, I'll buy a piece of land myself and preserve it. And there's a lot of places being preserved, but what kind of irks me is the black involvement. We always get kicked to the side somewhere or another, but it should be preserved as a black Seminole village. There was other black Seminole villages throughout the state. You know, Buckle Woman's Town and a lot of them, but I hate to see the bulldozers and things. cover them up. History going, because there's a lot of people don't know about black people's struggle here in Florida. The biggest black revolution in the Western Hemisphere was fought right here in Florida. Not in Haiti or Jamaica, but right here in Florida. The biggest Indian War was fought right here in Florida. They spent more money trying to remove the Seminoles out of Florida than Apache War, Cheyenne, Sioux, whatever. It was fought right here in Florida. They lost more men. They lost thousands of men right here in Florida. A lot of people don't know that. Yes, ma'am.
So you were raised in Groveland.
I was raised in Groveland.
Did your ancestors have any authentic Seminole items? What did they tell you about your Seminole history? Or were you just raised as a regular African-American person?
There's a place in Hernando County called Twin Lakes. And to tell you a story of my family, my great-great-great-grandfather dressed as a woman. He dressed up as a woman, him and his wife, as though they were two sisters with their kids. They left Lower Peachtree, Alabama, and came down to the Brooksville area. I don't know why is it, and we trying to visualize, how did he know that the early red sticks had come to Brooksville area and established a camp? We're saying that they knew about the Creek Indians before they left Alabama and knew they were down there. What happened was, when he moved down and lived with the Seminoles. And after a period of time, one of his sons married my great-great-grandmother, Sally. She was Seminole. We got documentation. She come from Alabama. We got that. Also, the house that my great-granddaddy built in 1869, we still got it. It's still there. My great-great-granddaddy was a medicine man. My mom was afraid to talk about it, how people would come there, kids would be maybe possessed with spirits, and they're swinging from the rafters, and before they left, they was okay. He would get naked and go to the four corners of the property and be chanting stuff. The University of Florida's been there, University of South Florida's been to the house. My cousin got a prehistoric whale too that they found, that they've got 4 circles in the University of Florida through a map showed where East Seminole village was right here in Central Florida. We got artifacts there. And my great-great-grandmother was buried under the house. Now that might sound peculiar. She was buried under the house. Now in Oklahoma, in the old days, they would build a little house-like structure on top of a grave. My granddaddy would allow nobody on that property. And that was in the back days when you had some mean white people. He didn't allow blacks or whites on that property. They didn't know what his wife looked like, because he took her from Chocochattie to his farm, and he didn't want nobody to know he had a Seminole woman. She wouldn't let nobody take a picture of her, but the older people remember her, how long her hair was, the short lady, and but he didn't allow nobody up there. So we got artifacts.
So who owns the house now?
My cousin.
Your cousins?
My cousin still lives on the property.
And that's in Hernando County?
It's in Hernando County, a place called Twin Lakes. And different professors, they've been there to the house. But like Mr. Willie John said, you know, we as black people, we don't claim any residuals from the tribe, because we don't come up to that blood quantum. But we are from the old blood, from the old people. And that blood still runs in our veins. And like a lady named Mary Jean Cornish, she said, why you call yourself Black Seminole? Why not just call yourself Seminole? You know? Oldest Jumper told me, he said, well, it's not the color of your skin, it's what's in your heart. If you got people at heart, then just as much Seminole as I am. Because there's Seminole people they sold somebody else. Don't even care about your own history, you know. You have to force them to learn about themselves. But any other questions? Yes, get him invited.
You mentioned Chocochatty. I know where Chocochatty Elementary School is in present-day location. Where would end the village?
You know where Highway 50?
Right.
You know where the air station?
Yeah.
Well, the air station is basically all that property across there in front of the air station. It's a big area. I've been taken there by a man named Doug Davis, and you won't believe where they planted their crops. It's on a hill you can see from miles away, and it's just like Alabama. With the hills and the clay, just like Alabama. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Abraham's town and how it was eradicated and destroyed?
After the Bays Massacre, it was an uproar, and you had several generals. They were going to make a sweep through Central Florida and other areas, and they said, well, we're going to take care of this problem. We're going to have a large group of soldiers taking this side, a large group taking this side. So it was a man named General Abraham Eustis. You heard of Eustis, Florida? His job was to make a sweep, and the sweep was going to come across Polite-Lakaha. When he got to Polite-Lakaha, really, it wasn't anybody there. And when he got there, they decided they would torch the place. This is a copy of a painting, maybe one of the soldiers did. It's called The Burning of Polite-Lakaha. And you can see they had rounded up cattle and horses, and they burned it down. Then they eventually ended up at Fort Brooke. But that's what happened. And they were pretty mad because that they massacred the black Seminoles from Abraham's town, got to the battle. They got there later on. They heard the cannon fire, but the survivors, it's been said, they took axes and knives and killed all the men that survived. And they were pretty much mad about that. Now, when we talk also about John Horace, when they removed him and a chief called Kawakachi, Wildcat, when they removed them to Oklahoma, to shorten the story out, when they got there were Creek Indians already there. There were Cherokees, and they were already established there. When they got there, there were Cherokees and Creeks who had been dealing with slavery. They were afraid those people was going to take their slaves back to the South and sell them. There was Creek slave catchers there. And so Kawakachi and John Horace, they decided they had gotten word that in Mexico that they had abolished slavery. And through connections, they decided to say, we're going all the way from Oklahoma all the way into Mexico. And when they got there, they approached the Presidente or whoever was in charge that they had skills as trackers and fighters from Florida that they could help them protect the borders between Mexico and the United States. You had raiding Indian people such as the Comanches, the Apaches, and you even had Comancheros, Banditos, you had outlaws coming into Mexico, raiding and coming back across the border. So they made a deal with them to help them protect the borders. And last month, I was in Blackisville, Texas, with some of the descendants of the Black Seminole Scouts. They were brave men. You had 4 Congressional Medal of Honor winners within the Black Seminole Scouts. And but as usual, after the Civil War, they had no more use for them. They told them you got to get off the Fort Clark, They brought wagons, loaded them up, took them back to Jacksonville, throw the stuff on the streets. It's a sad story. Sad story with black people and their plight for freedom. Yes, sir.
I read somewhere that Abraham became a Methodist minister. Do you know anything about that?
Well, it's been said, they called him the prophet also because of his religious ties and how he would relay certain biblical terms in his parlay with other people. I don't know about him being a Methodist, could have been a Methodist, but I have heard that he was called a prophet. Any other question? Anybody want to go to sleep?
As far as you know, having spoken to your ancestors about Chocachati, when was it established?
When was Chocachati established? It's been said around 1769. I'm thinking that it was a Red Stick group came out of Alabama, and the chief was called Seminole, and that's when the Chocachati was established. I think they were Miccosukee.
His name was
Like Red Stick.
His name was Blackbird.
Blackberry, okay. Lusty.
When the war started, they didn't want to fight. They took money for their cattle and they went to Fort Brooks and they got on the boats and they was out. And they didn't raise a gun against anybody, and today they are the Roberts family in Oklahoma.
Okay. So that's what happened to them.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
What is, I heard that natives, they have their native names and they have their American names. What are you guys called when you live in Seminole? Like
We?
Stumbling Bear or?
We had 3 names as a young man growing up. You have your childhood name, and then you have your adolescent name, and then if you go into maturity and you know, like this day and time, or back then, they have fasting sessions where you hunt for your vision and you fast for like 4 days. But this day and time, we still do that. I did it like 3 times. But also have master's degree, so that's like 8 years of college, something like that, you know. So they give you a title. And mine is ridiculous. That is called Gunflava Achihe. Your enemy sings about you.
Now that was different as you had a childhood name too.
Yeah, you know, and it's according to your mom, you know how she liked you. Then she would call you Chibana. And then they always call the girls. Oh, no, take that back. The girls, that they only got one name. And they always name a name like Yopalookie means it's got to be a term of during a battle, like you're looking over your shoulder or something like that. Or it's not like fun or
So also, we say Black Seminole warrior, we use the terminology lusty. Like something village. So Tuscaloosa means warrior. So we're black warrior. Tuscaloosa, lusty.
By the way, I just want to mention that, I'm not sure you know about it, down in Broward County, there's a county park named St. Croix Island.
Yeah, smoke signals coming in. Go ahead.
Yeah, down in, I see the sign there, Cheeto, Snake Warrior. Down in Broward County, there's a placards say that Cheeto custody during the Seminole War and afterwards lived on this island, on St. Cordero Island in Broward County. It's right on the Dade County, Broward County line.
Let me tell
And
you
he
about
was a
this
black
thing.
man.
No.
Our little group of reenactors, we adopted a name, a clan name. And there was a man named Billy Bowlegs III. And I think his mother was one of the last slaves that Seminoles had. And they were of the Snake clan. And she didn't have a clan name. And I read they designated her clan called the Little Black Snake Clan. So we just adopted that name called we are Black Warriors, where you see the word chief means little. So we, the little chief, let's say Chito Tessanumbi. That's what we say. So this is not a real clan. This is, we call ourselves the Black Snake Strike. And, but Chito means snake. Right, Mr.
Yeah.
Okay.
In our, if you don't have a plan, and, we most likely will get you a deer plan. So, because in this day and time, our last deer plan died, so there's no such thing anymore, so we don't regenerate plans, so.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, for you to be in a clan or to be part of the rest, you have to be full-blooded?
No. You got, your mom has to have a plan.
Okay.
Let me interject something. You're talking about racial groups. Now, it's an irony that the first woman to graduate from high school, go to nursing school, develop a newspaper, first woman chairman of the tribe. The irony is, her daddy was a white man. His daddy was John. Now you come on today, chairman of the tribe, started a new wave of entree for new shield, warrior, lost his finger in wrestling alligators, all that. James Billy, his dad was a white man. And what can you say? These people, what they had to offer, even though they don't have the full blood quantum, but they did contribute something as a whole to the people. So, I don't know what to say to follow that.
Maybe I have a plan.
Thank you both very much. And you,